The fall sun bathed the stone pathways of New York University's Stern School of Business in a soft golden light. Leaves rustled as students hurried between classes, some sipping coffee, others deep in conversation. It was just another crisp autumn day in Manhattan, except for the overwhelming buzz echoing across the campus quad. Security was tighter than usual. Secret Service agents were stationed at every corner. Professors were prepped, and students wore expressions of curiosity and disbelief. Whispers turned into chatter. Is he really speaking today? Barron Trump at Stern? Is this about his dad? Yes, Barron Trump, the only son of the current and once again President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was about to deliver the keynote speech for NYU Stern's Voices of Vision Student Leadership Forum. No one had expected him to accept the invitation. Despite being a second-year business student, Barron had maintained a reputation for being intensely private, academically sharp, and emotionally distant from the media circus surrounding his family. But this week had been different. Just days earlier, the president had made global headlines after a fiery press conference regarding foreign policy. Analysts called it divisive. Protesters flooded the streets. Commentators on every major network debated America's standing under Trump's renewed presidency. Social media exploded with both passionate support and intense criticism. And then came the announcement. Barron Trump to speak at NYU Stern on leadership in times of legacy and controversy. The campus community held its collective breath. Was he going to defend his father? Distance himself? Reveal personal family moments? No one knew. But the buzz had now turned into a roar. Inside the packed Stern auditorium, students, faculty, business leaders, and a live-streaming audience waited in anticipation. Cameras flashed. Phones were up. The energy was palpable. And then he walked in. Tall, composed, wearing a navy blue suit and no tie, Barron took the stage with quiet confidence. He didn't wave. He didn't smile for cameras. He simply walked to the podium, placed his notes down, looked at the crowd for a long, full moment, and said, "I didn't come here to change your minds. I came here to open my heart." A pin could have dropped. He adjusted the microphone slightly and continued, his voice steady yet laden with emotion. When your father is the President of the United States, not once but twice, you don't grow up like other kids. You don't get to have normal. You learn to watch people's eyes closely, to hear what they don't say out loud, and you carry the weight of a legacy that's both celebrated and cursed. Gasps. Stillness. The silence was deafening. But this isn't about politics. This isn't about policy. This is about a man, the man I know simply as Dad. And if you'll allow me, I want to tell you about him, the parts the cameras never see. Some students exchanged glances. Even the skeptics leaned forward. I've seen my father in war rooms and kitchens, at podiums and hospital beds. I've seen him at his best, and I've seen him break down. Yes, the man you see is bulletproof, has bled in private. And no matter what you think of him, he is human. And he is my hero. At that moment, the auditorium shifted. This wasn't the cold, calculated speech of a politician's son. This was raw, real, and just getting started. The applause was hesitant at first, then silent again, as if the crowd realized this wasn't a campaign rally. It was a confessional. Barron paused. Not because he lost his train of thought, but because the next part he knew would carry weight. There was a night during my father's first presidency, one you never heard about in the news, he began, his eyes fixed on the crowd but his voice somewhere far away. I was 13. It was past midnight. I couldn't sleep. I wandered down the West Wing halls and I found my dad alone in the Roosevelt room. No advisors. No cameras. Just him, a dim lamp, and a file in his hand. He didn't notice me at first. He was crying. The room tensed. Not out of disbelief, but because those words he was crying, spoken about a man the world saw as bulletproof, cracked through every political prejudice in the room. I asked him, "Dad, are you okay?" And he looked up startled, like a soldier caught off guard. He wiped his face, stood up, and gave me a hug. He said, "I'm fine, champ. I'm just thinking about what kind of country I'm leaving for you." A single sniffle was heard from the audience. That moment stuck with me. Because for the first time I realized he wasn't just carrying America, he was carrying me too. My future. My generation's future. And the cost of leadership is that sometimes you carry it all alone. Barron's voice cracked just slightly. I didn't understand then. But now I do. Now I've walked these halls of business education. I've read about strategy, economics, ethics. I've studied market behavior, but nothing prepared me for understanding the human burden behind decision-making at that level. He took a breath, the weight of memory pressing on his chest. "You know what's funny?" he said, letting a faint smile escape. My dad is the most stubborn man alive. If you try to change his mind, good luck. But when it comes to protecting the people he loves, he's softer than anyone I know. He once gave a Secret Service agent 3 days off to go visit his sick mother in Idaho because family comes first. And he never told the press about it. That's who he is. There was a shift in the room. Skeptics now looked down at their notebooks, visibly moved. Others were completely locked in. He never wanted me to follow in his footsteps. He always told me, find your own way, Barron. Don't live in my shadow. And that's exactly why I'm standing here today. Because I found my voice and I want to use it to show you the side of him that the world may never see. He paused again. Not because I expect you to agree with him, but because I believe that understanding begins with listening. And just like that, Barron's speech shifted from personal to powerful. He wasn't just a son defending his father. He was a young man owning his narrative. And the world, both inside the auditorium and across the millions watching the live stream, was listening. Barron gripped the sides of the podium, leaned slightly forward, and continued. His voice now steadier, more commanding. Let me tell you what it's like to walk into a classroom, a cafe, or a conference room and have every pair of eyes scan you. Not as Barron, but as Trump. You begin to wonder if people like you, or if they like the story they can tell about having been near you. You start to doubt friendships, second-guess praise, and sometimes even feel guilty for opportunities. That's the paradox of privilege. It gives you everything, except peace. A hum of agreement swept through the student body. This wasn't just a political tale anymore. It was deeply human. When I first got to NYU, I wanted to keep my head down, be anonymous. I dropped Trump from my student profile and just enrolled as Barron Williams. Gasps, murmurs. For 4 months, I was just another finance nerd trying to survive accounting and eat cold pizza between study sessions. And for 4 months, I saw the world without the filter of my last name. Barron looked out over the crowd. Even the professors now sat forward, eyes wide. But truth has a way of surfacing. Word got out. My secret didn't stay secret long. I remember walking into class the morning after the first article ran. Trump's son hiding in plain sight at NYU. And everything had changed. Whispers, eyes, fake smiles. A girl I'd spent weeks talking to suddenly ghosted me. And for a moment, I hated my name. The crowd froze. But then, something strange happened. One of my professors, Professor Allen, corporate ethics, called me to his office. I expected judgment. Instead, he said something I'll never forget. Barron's voice slowed. He said, "You don't get to choose the name you're born into, Barron. But you do get to choose how you honor it. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you add to it." The room was dead silent. That was the first time I stopped running from my name and started thinking about how I could use it. For good. Barron's tone grew stronger now. Bolder. I'm not my father. I don't want to be. But I do want to take the best of him. The grit, the fearlessness, the devotion to family, and blend it with something new. Something better. More listening. More empathy. More bridges. Fewer walls. He let that hang for a moment. I'm studying finance because I believe in the power of economics to change lives. I believe in startups built in garages, single mothers running businesses from their kitchens, and young dreamers who see numbers not just as profits, but as impact. I want to build that future. A soft applause started and grew. But Barron raised his hand gently, signaling he wasn't finished yet. Some of you may still hate my father. Some of you may always will. That's your right. This is America, we're allowed to disagree. But I ask only one thing of you, don't hate me for being his son. Hate should never be inherited. His voice cracked again. I've spent so long trying to escape the shadow of a giant. But what I've learned is that shadows only grow when you stop walking forward. The applause came harder now, clapping that echoed off the marble and wood panels of the auditorium. Professors stood. Students rose to their feet. But Barron Trump didn't smile. Not yet. He wasn't done. The standing ovation lasted nearly a full minute. But Barron remained composed, almost solemn. He let the applause die down on its own. When silence returned, he stepped away from the microphone and walked forward to the edge of the stage. It felt like he was closing the distance, not just physically but emotionally, with everyone in the room. I didn't come here today just to talk about my father, he began softly, his tone now deeply introspective. I came here to talk about truth. The truth we never see in headlines. The truth we rarely talk about in lecture halls. The truth we ignore in debates. The truth that leaders are people. Flawed. Human. Vulnerable. He folded his hands together. My father is not perfect. No president is. No person is. I've disagreed with him. We've argued. Once, during the pandemic, I told him I thought he was making a huge mistake pushing for early reopenings. I was 16, terrified, and emotional. He listened. He didn't snap. He said, "Convince me, Barron." And we sat at that long dining table in the White House for 3 hours. Just debating. He didn't change his policy. But he changed how he explained it. Because one voice, even mine, mattered to him. Barron let out a soft breath. That moment taught me that leadership isn't about always being right. It's about being willing to listen to people who might be. His eyes scanned the crowd again. In this school, we're taught how to lead companies, manage capital, mitigate risk. But the one thing we rarely talk about is conscience. He leaned into the words. What happens when profit clashes with principle? When success costs someone else's peace? When the right decision is the unpopular one? I've watched my dad make those choices. Some I agree with. Some I don't. But I've never once seen him make them for personal gain. Not once. He fights for what he believes is right even when the whole world tells him he's wrong. The emotion in his voice was raw now. Undeniable. And that conviction, that unapologetic fire in him, that's what I carry forward. The auditorium was silent. A rare, sacred stillness. I know some people think I've had it easy. Born rich. Son of a president. And yes, I've had incredible privilege. But that doesn't mean I haven't hurt. That I haven't questioned. That I haven't felt the weight of 1,000 assumptions. Because what privilege doesn't protect you from is pressure. Constant, invisible, and suffocating. So, I chose to speak today not to ask for sympathy, but to remind us all. No matter your last name, your status, your politics, we all deserve to be seen as we are. Not as headlines, not as memes, but as people. He stepped back behind the podium. My father is a man the world may never fully understand. But he's also a man who taught me to love this country, to work hard, to speak up, and most importantly, to care. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Barron took one final look around the packed hall. Some students had tears in their eyes. Some faculty had their hands clasped at their chins, stunned by the maturity pouring from a 19-year-old heart. I came to NYU Stern to build a future. But in these halls, I found my voice. And now I hope to use it not just for my father, not just for my name, but for every student who's ever doubted if they belong. He stepped back. Thank you. And with that, Barron Trump slowly walked off the stage. Not needing a spotlight, not waiting for cameras. Just a son, a student, and now, a speaker whose words had crossed borders and shattered assumptions. As Barron exited the stage, the standing ovation reignited, this time more thunderous, more emotional than before. It wasn't just applause, it was a reckoning. His words had touched something deeper than politics, something universal. Vulnerability. Humanity. Courage. Across the room, phones were already buzzing. Video clips were being uploaded to social media in real time, accompanied by captions like, Barron Trump just shocked the world with the most moving speech of the decade. This is not the Barron we thought we knew. The son became the teacher tonight. By the time he walked down the back hallway of the Stern Auditorium, the hashtags had begun trending worldwide. Hashtag Barron Speaks. Hashtag Trump's Untruth. Hashtag From Shadow to Voice. Backstage moments. Barron stood quietly in the green room, shoulders still tense. The adrenaline was fading. It was just him now, back to being a college kid in a suit that didn't quite feel like his own. Then came a knock. The door opened. It was Dean Whitaker, flanked by Professors Allen and Kwan. Barron, the dean began, emotion thick in his throat. You didn't just give a speech today. You started something. Barron blinked. Started what? Professor Allen smiled. A movement. Of truth. Of courage. Of refusing to be boxed in by legacy. Behind them, students started trickling in, one by one, just wanting to shake his hand to thank him. Some brought flowers. Some brought letters. One international student, barely fluent in English, stood shaking as she said, You speak for all of us, who want to be seen for who we are. Thank you, Barron. The White House call. Back in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump was watching live from the private study. His usual bravado was nowhere to be seen. For once, he wasn't speaking. He wasn't tweeting. He wasn't interrupting. He was just crying. Melania stood beside him, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. He didn't just defend you, she whispered. He defined himself. Donald wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. He's better than I ever was. He picked up his phone. Called Barron. It rang once. Dad? A beat of silence. Then, I've done a lot of things in my life, Trump said, voice thick with emotion, but you, son, you're the best thing I've ever done. Across the globe, the story exploded. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, every network played the full speech on loop. Trevor Noah on his nightly show said, "Okay, I admit it, I didn't see this coming. That was powerful." The New York Times ran a full-page editorial titled "The Speech That Transcends Legacy." Time magazine printed a special issue, Barron Trump, Finding His Voice. World leaders weighed in too. Canada's Prime Minister called it a masterclass in intergenerational courage. France's president wrote, "A new Trump with a new truth." The aftermath. Barron kept a low profile after the speech. He didn't grant interviews. Didn't sign any book deals. Didn't chase the fame. He just went back to his dorm, grabbed a protein bar, and started studying for a macroeconomics test. Because, at the core, he was still just Barron. But everything had changed. He started receiving speaking invitations from universities, nonprofits, even the United Nations. He accepted only one, for a high school in Queens where immigrant students were trying to believe they belonged. In that gymnasium, standing in front of teenagers who reminded him of himself, awkward, unsure, quietly ambitious, he began. "I know what it's like to grow up in someone else's shadow. But I want to tell you something my father told me when I was a kid. You weren't born to stay small. You were born to rise. Legacy begins again." Barron Trump didn't become president. At least, not yet. But he did become a builder of minds, of bridges, of futures. He launched a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth to study finance and leadership. He published a book, The Shadow and the Flame, about legacy, family, and identity. It became a bestseller. And though he never asked to become a symbol, he became one anyway. Not of Trumpism. Not of privilege. But of transformation. Of truth. Of a young man who stood on a stage, embraced his father's name, then dared the world to see him as something more.